Hello, it's Lorna. Welcome back to another video. I'm actually filming this video on the same day as I did my previous one on the echocardiogram, just because I'm on a bit of a roll and it's been ages since I've been able to film, and yeah, I thought as I'm in the mood and like kind of in the right mindset, then I might as well just roll with it and do another one, hence being in the same weird spot but cosy spot of my room, and yeah, and being in the same clothes. I don't know why I paused that. So yeah, this video is again kind of following on from all like health related tests that I've had to have around PoTS and like kind of my experience of it and what to expect, and I'm hoping that this is going to be the last in my test series, or like my last for a while, because as far as I know this is like the last of a spate of tests that I've needed in like the diagnosis process for PoTS. So the test I'm going to be talking about today is the tilt table test, and this is like the main diagnostic test for PoTS. Again, it was like similar to my echocardiogram. It was actually quite a relief to have the test, because I had to really push for it, because originally like my my cardiologist, he wanted first to like have all the other tests done, like the ECG, the 24-hour ECG and echocardiogram, to like rule out other conditions before even looking at the diagnosis process for PoTS, and there was no real reason why they couldn't go ahead like with the diagnosing for PoTS a lot, like at the same time, because I might have like another thing going on, like another problem with my heart, but equally that wouldn't change the fact that I have PoTS and need tests around that. Like there was no reason why they couldn't go ahead with those tests as well, and yeah, it had been a long wait anyway to get the other tests, so it just felt like it was unnecessarily like prolonging it. So I had to like get my, I think I've explained some of this in videos quite a while ago, but I got my GP, like she agreed with me that like she thought that they would have put, like the first thing they would do is to like refer me for a tilt table test, because that was the problem that I was like presenting with the symptoms of, and all like other tests were pointing towards. So yeah, she explained that, and cardiology in the end like relented, and so they did refer me for a tilt table test. There was a bit of a waiting list, because again it couldn't be done at like my nearest hospital. It had to be done in Brighton, where they have like facilities to be able to do the test and the people who are trained to do it. So yeah, it was just like it was good to have a date, even though there was a bit of a wait. I actually felt relieved and was looking forward to it, in the sense that it was the main like test that would get me closer to like a confirmed diagnosis, knowing more about what the problem is, and then get me towards like actually having a treatment plan and trying to improve things. So for me it was really important that it happened. So yeah, the tilt table test, I think I had it like the end of February. Yeah, because it was the end of February, because actually the same day I found out I had a job interview and I found out I got my job. So that was really good, because it was a hard day otherwise. So yeah, the main thing about the tilt table test, like to expect, and this was something I went in expecting, is that the whole idea of it is that it brings on your symptoms. And so it is unpleasant. And like the idea of it is basically to make you really symptomatic. So I was expecting that, but to be honest, like if those are the symptoms that you're experiencing in your daily life, it's nothing new. That like, so it's unpleasant, but it's no more unpleasant than like a bad day with your condition. So yeah, basically a tilt table test is there to like check any like abnormalities or changes in heart rate and blood pressure with postural change. And it's kind of literally what it says on the tin, like a tilt table. So yeah, basically the whole idea of the test is that you are like kind of strapped to a table, and then they tilt you upwards to nearly standing, and they like kind of, they record your heart rate, your blood pressure, and they ask you how you're feeling, or like any symptoms you're experiencing, make any like observations of how you might look, and yeah, that's kind of the idea of it. It brings on the symptoms and with like postural change. It is quite a long test. I think for the whole thing they allow like an hour and a half, they said on my letter. Something that you usually like get a letter free, and it gives you like guidance about what to expect, what to come wearing, that kind of thing. It also, like the guidance, you're not allowed to eat for 4 hours before a tilt table test, and it's basically because a lot of like the test, if it brings on symptoms, can cause like nausea and vomiting, and it's basically just to lessen the chance of that, but you are allowed to like drink as normal. So what I did on the actual day is that I just made sure I had like a big breakfast and then ate after the test, and I did feel like a bit hungry, but not too bad. It's not like fasting for a blood test where you have to fast for like 12 hours or whatever. So yeah, something that and in terms of like what you can wear, it's basically just comfortable clothing. I don't think there was anything else really to do with that, just comfortable clothing. And yeah, what I did find quite surprising, so when I was like got to the department in the hospital and was called in for my tilt table test, there were quite a lot more people in the room than I was expecting. So in my case there was like, they all kind of had different roles within it. There was like a doctor who was like coordinating the whole thing, so she was sat there mainly like just observing the overall picture, and then they had another doctor who was like kind of in charge of like fitting the monitors and making sure it was all working, and then they had a nurse who was just there really to observe me and make sure that I was all right and keep an eye on my symptoms. And then there was like, I think she was a student, but there was like another healthcare professional, and she was there to like record the like heart rate and blood pressure readings. So it was a bit more people than I was expecting, but yeah, they were pretty nice. Again, like I think I explained this on the echocardiogram one, but for some reason they like again wanted to take a height and weight, and they were quite insistent and saying that they couldn't do that, like they couldn't do the test unless they had a height and weight. So in the end, like I explained the issue, and I was able to provide them with like the most recent record that I was aware of, and they were happy to go with that. Something my GPs like looked into, because there really wasn't a reason why they couldn't do the test. It's just kind of for their records, and they would have been able to get that record. Yeah, what happened, I'd say quite a lot of time was spent like actually getting all the monitors on and getting everything set up. So you basically like they ask you to lie on a bed, but you like keep your shoes on. That might be different for some people, but yeah, in my case they said like keep your shoes on, and there's like a board at the end of the bed where you like rest your feet against, and they just said like try and get yourself as near as possible to it, so then like when you tilt you don't jolt down. And then they like, yeah, then they had to like fit all the other stuff. So you have like a 3-lead ECG, and they got like, I think they got the female student health care assistant to like fit that. And yeah, it was similar kind of one to when I had the 24-hour ECG. So it was quite straightforward. I've got quite used to them. They just like, yeah, basically put 3 stickers on your chest, and I was able to like keep, I had a t-shirt on, and I lifted it up and she just went kind of underneath it. And yeah, so that was pretty straightforward. What took a bit more time to set up is that they monitor your blood pressure, but they don't do it off the arm, like as where you normally have a blood pressure cuff. They do it off your thumb. So they put this like tiny little cuff on your thumb that's like all wired up to a machine. But in my case, they were like struggling to find a thumb, like well, it's actually supposed to go on your fingers. Yeah, that was it. So yeah, it just goes on like one of your fingers, and it does the same as like the cuff in your arm. Every so often it will like squeeze and then tight and then release. But in my case they couldn't find a working cuff that would fit any of my fingers. Like they were all too big because I have quite small fingers. And they didn't have any child's ones. I found this with normal blood pressure cuffs. So in the end they had to use like the smallest one they had, but on my thumb. So that took a while to get sorted, and they were actually considering like having to go for an arm cuff. It just, apparently it is not as accurate and good for like doing lots of readings. I don't know, that's just what they said. In place, then they just put like a guard over your, one that goes kind of over your legs, like it's just like a Velcro kind of strap, and then they put one that goes like over your hips, and again it's just like kind of a cover that they strap down. I would say like, I was expecting this, which helped. If you're a quite claustrophobic person, and I'm not very good with feeling trapped, I would say it could be like difficult, but it's not like really tight. You kind of aren't completely aware it's there. It's just there to like kind of catch you if you were to faint when you're tilted up, and stop you from like falling forwards or basically falling off the table. So yeah, it doesn't feel like you're really tightly bound to this table, and like you could easily forget that it's there. So yeah, that wasn't so bad. And in general, like they let you know what they're doing, and I find that helps like with anxiety when you know what to expect, and they let you kind of say, yeah, that's fine, go ahead with that, and that can make you feel like more in control. And yeah, and that always helps. And they did explain like how the test was going to work. So the first stage of the test, I think for about 10 or 15 minutes, they just lie you flat, and they turn all the lights off so it's dark, and that's just so there's nothing like stimulating you, and you just have to lie there and not say anything, and no one in the room says anything. And I think that's just to like get a sense of your normal, really. Yeah, so I did that, and to be honest, that bit was quite boring. It was just like, I think I was counting like the tiles on the ceiling. Yeah, because I just had to stay really still, look up at the ceiling, and no one was saying anything, and they were just like noting down the readings every so often. Like I think the blood pressure cuff, like it was every 5 minutes or something, or on their demand that they could do it if they wanted to get it like at a particular time. They did say like the whole way through they said if the whole test becomes like too unpleasant, you can ask to stop at any time. But they said like you'll be best, in terms of getting the most accurate results, you're best to like ride it out as much as you can. And yeah, that's basically what I did, but it's good to know that you can say stop and they would stop. After that, like about 10 or 15 minutes when I get kind of your baseline, they then just like tilt you up to near standing. So it's not doesn't feel completely like standing. It's something like, I think it's like 70 degrees, something like that. So you do still feel like you have the support of the table. So I wouldn't say it completely represents standing, but it does represent like a postural change, and is near to how it feels to be standing, and like it does still bring on symptoms. So yeah, and then basically they do the same thing. It's just loads of people looking at you. That is a bit weird, I have to say, where you're like strapped to this thing, and there's just lots of people either looking at you or looking at a machine that's like behind you that you can't see with all your readings on, which is a good idea because it can be quite distracting to see your readings and like unnerving if they're particularly bad. And yeah, every so often they'll like ask you how you're feeling, like what symptoms you've got, and with me, like, my symptoms tend to come on quite quickly once I go to like standing. So within like a couple of minutes I was struggling, and like after 5 minutes of just like standing up I was really struggling, because that's usually my limit of what I could stand still for. And yes, they just asked what symptoms you're experiencing, and like in my case it was just my standard PoTS symptoms, like headaches, and yeah, headache, nausea, getting really hot and clammy, my vision was going blurry, and like started like blacking out and kind of going grey. That's what it tends to do first, and like I was getting like progressively more shaky. Apparently I went very pale, and yeah, they just like ask you from time to time how you're feeling, and yeah, so that went on, I think, for like 20, no, probably less than that, like 15 minutes. And I did, like, I was really struggling at that point. Like, I was feeling like I was about to pass out. But I think, had I been standing up without being strapped to the table, I think I would have probably passed out a lot sooner. But I think because I could just like slightly lie back onto it, that slightly took the pressure off. Like, yeah, so it didn't, yeah, I think that's the best way I can explain it. Then I think after about 15-20 minutes of standing, they then give you this spray which they use for like angina. I think it's called GTN spray. I'll just look up what it is. So yeah, it is called GTN spray, and that's like glycerol trinitrate. I think that's what it says. It's a spray that is usually used to relieve angina and chest pain, and it is sprayed like under the tongue. So I was like semi-conscious at this point, but if you get to that point of the test, they will do this, because I think the idea is that it may just have an impact on your symptoms, like may worsen them, because yeah, ideally the reason they normally do this this test is where people have experienced like episodes of fainting or pre-syncope, like a near faint. So the idea of the whole test is to basically bring on that, and yeah, apparently like this spray in some people could either have like a positive effect or could cause like an episode. So yeah, like it goes to spray under your tongue, and it says it relaxes and widens blood vessels in your heart and in the rest of your body. And yeah, so I had this spray, and they said it can, like, a side effect is that it can cause a headache, and I did find after a while I did have headache, and I had a headache afterwards, but not that bad. I probably would have had a headache anyway, to be honest, because of how symptomatic I was. And yeah, it's just like, it's a bit unpleasant when the spray goes on. It's just like, yeah, it's like any spray really. It's a bit like numbing when it goes down your throat, but I've had similar before. And yeah, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. I couldn't really argue, I just kind of went along with it by that point. But like with PoTS, it causes like a narrowing of the blood vessels. So because this spray like widens it, it took about, like, I think they said it takes a couple of minutes to take effect, like 5 minutes to have full effect. And initially, I think there was like, after 2 or 3 minutes, unexpectedly, I felt a little bit better. Like, I didn't feel as symptomatic, and I think, yeah, because as I said, like, PoTS narrows blood vessels, so if, like, this spray widens them, then, yeah, that's kind of, like, counteracting that. So all of a sudden, like I felt a bit better, but then it was, like, short-lived, and then all of a sudden I felt even worse than ever, basically. I just felt like I was going to be sick. I felt shaky, and at that point I did pass out. And as soon as you pass out, they like tilt the table back, and that like relieves your symptoms very quickly. And they tilt it back, like, not just to flat, but so your legs are higher than your head. And in my case, that always does like relieve my symptoms pretty quickly. And yeah, so they did that, and so 1 minute I was kind of like that and going, and the next minute my eyes came open and I was like that, and I felt like immediately a lot better, which is what they expect, basically, and can indicate PoTS or any condition that's kind of brought on by postural change. Like, left me like that for a little while, and then they like put me to lying flat, and it was just basically how I would come round normally from an episode. That, like, once I'd lie down for a while and I was feeling okay, they suggested they tilted me up to sitting, and they had some water, which always does really help. Like, I had lots of cold water, and yeah, then after a while I then like swung my legs around and sat like up without being propped up, and once I was kind of doing okay, the idea like from that point was just getting me in a fit enough state to leave. And yeah, something they suggest in your letter, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, is that it is really important to bring someone with you to your appointment and have help like getting there, because you wouldn't, I can't drive anyway because of my PoTS, but yeah, you wouldn't be safe to drive basically afterwards, because you can feel very like symptomatic, lightheaded and drowsy and drained, just basically how you feel after fainting, after the test. So they ask that everyone who's coming is accompanied. So my mum, yeah, my parents brought me, and she sat out in the waiting room, because yeah, there was no, wouldn't have felt like reassured to have her with me during the test. And yeah, I think she might have found it like distressing, because essentially it's just watching me there struggling with my symptoms. But you are allowed to bring someone in to the test if you'd find that reassuring. But they just have to like sit there and not do anything. So yeah, the idea of like at the end of the test was just getting me in a fit enough state to be able to leave. So for a while, like I was still all hooked up to the machines, because they're obviously monitoring me, kind of making my journey back to upright. And after I seemed a bit more stable, sat down, they like trialled me standing up, and of course as usual, like my heart rate went up, and that's just what happens, and so I had to sit back down again. But I kind of said it doesn't feel anything different to like normal. I think that's the best we're gonna get. So they tried it again, and I'm a bit happier. Yeah, and then they brought me out. Yeah, I was quite pleased to be able to walk out, because I knew sometimes, like, because the idea is it would bring on a particularly bad like PoTS attack, that yeah, it felt better basically to be walking out rather than having to be sent home, like back to the car in a wheelchair. So yeah, and then they like escorted me out to the waiting room where I had to wait for, they said to sit there for like 15 or 20 minutes, and if I start to feel like faint again, to let the reception know, and then they'll come back out. And in that time, yeah, just to sit there, have more water, and also like have a salty snack, which is kind of basically how I normally manage like a PoTS episode. And then they came back and checked on me, and said like, if you feel well enough, yeah, you can go now. Yeah, so that was the tilt table test. It is very unpleasant, but it is the kind of thing that you only really have to have once, or not that often. So I think that's how I was seeing it. Like, it's unpleasant, but it's kind of necessary, and it's something you only have to have done once. Yeah, you might, I think it depends like kind of on the result, and just how your symptoms progress as to whether you'd have to have it again. But yeah, usually you just have one and that's it. Yeah, so again, it's like at the end of the test they're not allowed to tell you like what the results are, like as in was it a positive tilt table test, as in yeah, did you have an episode, and that usually gives like diagnosis of PoTS, or is it like a negative test, as in it didn't, and or it can be inconclusive, but generally like they say that if you like faint in it, then obviously it will probably be a positive test, or something will have come up because you became symptomatic. And they did give, I think, a sense that it was a positive test, in that they asked, like, when they explained that they'll send off, like, all the readings to my cardiologist, like my consultant, and they asked, like, who they were and when my next appointment with them is. And I said when it was, and they were like, I think they might want to see you sooner than that. So that kind of gave me an indication that they, like, something had come up, it was a positive test and they would want to see me. Actually, as it happens, despite that, they didn't want to see me sooner, because it's just like, it's just a standard thing with PoTS that like, if it is still classed as not urgent, and the waiting list for like cardiology is really large, they just couldn't get me in sooner, so I'm going to my next appointment, which is in like a couple of weeks, and I should get the follow-up then. So yeah, it's a bit annoying to have to wait, especially, yeah, when it's quite like a big test and you don't know what the results are. But obviously, like, I know it's nothing like threatening, it would just be helpful in terms of like progressing with like my treatment and that kind of thing, and just learning to manage my condition. So yeah, that's the tilt table test. Afterwards, like, it's just, yeah, I felt quite unwell afterwards. It was just basically like having a bad PoTS episode, in that my nausea was really bad. I did have to take my anti-sickness in order to be able to eat, and I was just very symptomatic and just felt, yeah, very drained, had a bit of a headache, just how I feel really when I feel really unwell. Yeah, so it was particularly bad episode, because that's like the idea of it. It does feel a bit like torture, and I said that to them, because it's kind of like it forces you to stand and make you feel unwell, whereas usually like if I started to feel unwell I'd be able to sit down or something like that. So yeah, it does feel a bit like torture like that, but I was expecting that, and they are nice about it. So yeah, that's a tilt table test. I hope this has given like an idea of what to expect. Yeah, and I hope this has been helpful or interesting, because it's quite an unusual test to have, so it just might be like interesting generally. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll see another video from me soon. Thank you, bye.